The text message came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, just as I was reviewing quarterly reports in my downtown office. My phone buzzed and I saw Dad's name on the screen. "We're selling the house tomorrow. Your stuff will be on the curb. Don't bother coming by." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a single word, "Okay." What Dad didn't know, what none of my family knew, was that I'd purchased our childhood home 3 years ago through my holding company, Sterling Properties LLC. They'd been struggling financially after Dad's business, Morrison Construction, had defaulted on several major contracts. The bank had been ready to foreclose and I'd quietly stepped in to buy the mortgage. For 3 years I'd let them live there rent-free while they got back on their feet, all while they believed they still owned the house. They had no idea their monthly mortgage payments were going into a trust fund I'd set up for their retirement. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dad. "And don't expect any family support anymore. You've been nothing but a disappointment. Time to face the real world." I set my phone aside and returned to my reports. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. At 8:15 a.m. my phone rang. The caller ID showed Richard Morrison, my realtor who'd been handling the family's housing situation without them knowing I was involved. "Good morning, Richard. Miss Sterling, I have an unusual situation. There's a gentleman here claiming he owns the property at 1247 Maple Street and wants to list it for sale immediately." "That would be Robert Morrison, my father. Put him on speaker, please." I heard some shuffling, then Dad's familiar voice, loud and aggressive. "Look, I don't know who this Sterling person is, but I own this house free and clear. My family has lived here for 15 years. I want it listed today for $850,000. Richard's professional voice responded carefully. "Sir, I'm afraid there's been some confusion. According to the county records, this property is owned by Sterling Properties LLC. You would need the owner's permission to list it." "That's impossible." Dad's voice cracked. "I have the deed right here. Sir, that deed shows the original purchase from 2009. However, the property was sold to Sterling Properties in 2021 when Morrison Construction defaulted on the mortgage payments." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear Dad's world crashing down around him. "Richard," I said calmly, "please give Mr. Morrison my contact information. Tell him the property owner would like to discuss the situation." "Of course, Miss Sterling." 20 minutes later my office phone rang. "What the hell is going on?" Dad's voice exploded through the speaker. "Who is Sterling Properties? How did they get my house?" "Hello, Dad." The silence stretched for at least 10 seconds. "Alexandra? What? How do you know about this?" "Because Sterling Properties is my company. I bought the house 3 years ago when you defaulted on the mortgage." Another long silence. When Dad spoke again his voice was barely a whisper. "You own our house?" "I do. And for the past 3 years, every payment you thought you were making to the bank was actually going into a retirement fund I set up for you and Mom." "This isn't possible. You don't have that kind of money. You work at some little tech company, you drive that old Toyota." "I drive a 2018 Toyota Camry because it's reliable and doesn't draw attention. And yes, I work in tech. I'm the CEO of Sterling Tech Solutions." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "Dad, are you sitting down? Because there's more we need to discuss." "More?" "Sterling Properties doesn't just own your house. We own the entire Maple Street neighborhood. 47 houses total, all purchased over the past 4 years as investment properties." That's impossible. "Would you like to see the portfolio? I can email you the documentation." "Alexandra, I don't understand. How could you afford? When did you?" "We had no idea." "You had no idea because you never asked. Every time I tried to tell you about my business, you changed the subject or made some comment about me wasting time with computers." I could hear Mom's voice in the background asking what was happening. "Dad, put me on speaker so Mom can hear this too." A moment later Mom's shaky voice came through. "Alexandra? Honey, what's going on?" "Hi, Mom. Dad and I were just discussing the house situation." "What house situation?" "Your father said we were selling." "Mom, sit down. There are some things you both need to know about my career that I haven't been able to share with you." Over the next hour I walked them through everything. Sterling Tech Solutions, which I'd built from a small consulting firm into a $180 million software development company. Sterling Properties, my real estate investment arm that owned over 300 properties across 3 states. Sterling Foundation, which had donated $15 million to various charities over the past 2 years. But your apartment, Mom said weakly. It's so small. It's the penthouse of a building I own downtown. I prefer smaller spaces. And your car is paid for and reliable. I don't need a luxury car to validate my success. Dad finally found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling? When did I ever have the chance, Dad? Every family gathering, every phone call, every conversation was about how disappointed you were in my life choices. When exactly was I supposed to bring up my business success? I could hear Mom crying softly. 3 years ago, when you were facing foreclosure, I tried to discuss helping you. You told me to focus on my own problems and stop trying to solve everyone else's with my computer games. I remember, Dad whispered. So I helped anyway. Quietly. I bought your mortgage, let you stay in the house, and made sure your payments went towards securing your retirement instead of enriching some bank. You saved our house? I saved your house, Dad. But more than that, I saved your dignity. You never had to know you'd lost it in the first place. The conversation was interrupted by my assistant's voice over the intercom. Miss Sterling, your 10 a.m. is here. The mayor and city council members for the downtown development project. Thank you, Janet. Tell them I'll be 5 more minutes. Alexandra, Mom said, did she just say the mayor? Yes. Sterling Tech Solutions is the lead contractor for the new Smart City initiative. We're implementing AI-driven traffic management, digital infrastructure, and public safety systems across the entire metropolitan area. That's a government contract? Dad asked. A $250 million government contract, to be precise. We beat out Microsoft and Google for the bid. I heard what sounded like Dad sitting down heavily in a chair. Dad, I need to take this meeting, but we should continue this conversation tonight. Can you and Mom meet me for dinner? Where? Mom asked. How about the Metropolitan? Downtown, top floor. That place costs $200 per person, Dad protested automatically. I'm aware of the prices, Dad. I eat there regularly. Another long silence. Alexandra, Dad said finally, I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. We'll talk tonight. 7 o'clock. We'll be there. After hanging up, I sat back in my leather chair and looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office. 43 floors below, the city bustled with activity, much of it now running on software systems my company had developed. My assistant Janet knocked on the door. The mayor's delegation is ready when you are. Send them in. And Janet, can you have my driver pick up my parents tonight? They're not used to downtown parking. Of course. The usual car. Actually, use the Tesla Model S. It's time they saw that I didn't just succeed, I succeeded spectacularly. The meeting with the city officials went smoothly. We discussed the second phase of the Smart City project, which would expand our AI systems to include automated utilities management and predictive maintenance for city infrastructure. By the end of the meeting, they'd approved an additional $85 million in funding. As the delegation left, Mayor Harrison shook my hand. Alexandra, I have to say, when we first met 3 years ago, I had no idea your company would transform our city this dramatically. Crime is down 23%, traffic efficiency is up 40%, and our energy costs have decreased by 18%. You've exceeded every projection. Thank you, Mayor Harrison. Phase 2 will show even more dramatic results. I believe it. Oh, and congratulations on the Forbes recognition. Tech Innovator of the Year. Well deserved. After they left, I spent the afternoon reviewing reports from our various divisions. Sterling Tech Solutions now employed 847 people across 4 offices. Sterling Properties managed $89 million in real estate assets. Sterling Foundation had committed to building 3 new community centers and funding scholarships for 200 students this year. At 6:30 p.m. I left my office and walked to the parking garage. My black Model S was waiting along with my driver Marcus. Good evening, Miss Sterling. Should I collect your parents first? Yes, please. They're at 1247 Maple Street. The house in your Sterling Properties portfolio? That's the one, Marcus. And tonight they're going to learn it's mine. The drive to Maple Street took 15 minutes. As we pulled up to the modest two-story house where I'd grown up, I saw Mom and Dad waiting on the front porch, both dressed in their best clothes. They looked nervous and confused. Marcus got out to open their doors. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. I'm Marcus, Miss Sterling's driver." "Driver?" Mom whispered to Dad as they got into the car. "Good evening," I said as they settled into the plush leather seats. "How are you both feeling?" "Confused," Dad admitted. "Alexandra, this car must cost more than I made in a year at the construction company. It's efficient and environmentally friendly. I try to make responsible choices." Mom was running her hands over the leather interior. "Honey, this is beautiful. And so quiet. Electric vehicles tend to be quieter than traditional cars." As we drove through downtown, Dad stared out the windows at the digital billboards and smart traffic lights that my company had installed. "These new traffic systems," he said slowly, "they've made driving downtown so much easier." "Sterling Tech Solutions designed and implemented those systems," I said casually. "You did that?" "My team did that." We pulled up to the Metropolitan where the valet immediately recognized my car and driver. "Good evening, Miss Sterling. Your usual table." "Yes, thank you, David." As we walked through the restaurant, I noticed several business leaders nod respectfully in my direction. The maitre d' personally escorted us to my regular table, a corner booth with a panoramic view of the city. "Your wine selection is ready, Miss Sterling," he said as we sat down. "Thank you, Francois." After he left, Mom looked around the elegant restaurant with wide eyes. "Alexandra, everyone here seems to know you. I eat here frequently. It's convenient to my office." "Where is your office?" Dad asked. I pointed out the window to the gleaming skyscraper across the street. "Sterling Tower. The entire 43rd floor." Dad followed my gesture and saw the large Sterling Tech Solutions sign illuminated on the building's facade. "That whole building?" Mom asked. "I own floors 40 through 45. The rest are leased to other companies." The waiter arrived with our wine, a $400 bottle of Bordeaux that I'd selected earlier. "Miss Sterling, shall I pour the usual?" "Please." After the wine was poured and our orders taken, Dad leaned forward across the table. "Alexandra, I need to understand something. When did all this happen? When did you become so successful?" "It didn't happen overnight, Dad. I've been building these companies for 8 years, ever since I graduated from Stanford." "Stanford?" Mom's eyes widened. "You went to Stanford? We thought you went to State University." "I got a full scholarship to Stanford for my master's in computer science and business administration. You were both so busy with Michael's wedding planning that you never asked where I was going to school." The painful truth of that statement hung in the air. Michael, their golden child, had received all their attention while I quietly earned degrees from one of the world's top universities. "We were so focused on the wedding," Mom admitted, tears forming in her eyes. "After graduation, I started Sterling Tech Solutions in a small rented office with $15,000 in savings. The first year I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, building our first major software platform." "What kind of software?" Dad asked. "Predictive analytics for logistics and supply chain management. Basically, I created systems that help companies predict what they need when they need it and how to get it most efficiently." Our appetizers arrived: lobster bisque and seared scallops. As we ate, I continued the story. "By year 2, we had our first major client, Henderson Manufacturing. That contract was worth $2.3 million and allowed me to hire 12 employees." "Henderson Manufacturing?" Dad said. "They were one of my biggest clients at Morrison Construction. They had us build their new warehouse complex." "I know. I recommended you for that project." Dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What?" "When Henderson's CEO asked if I knew any reliable construction companies, I gave him your contact information. That $4.7 million project that saved Morrison Construction from bankruptcy 3 years ago? That was me helping you even though you had no idea." Dad put down his fork entirely. You got me that contract?" "I did. And when you started struggling with cash flow 6 months later, I made sure Henderson paid their invoices early. I also arranged for 2 other companies to hire Morrison Construction for smaller projects." "Why?" Dad's voice was barely audible. "Because you're my father. Because I wanted your business to succeed. Because I hoped that maybe if Morrison Construction was stable, you'd have time to notice what I was building. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. We're horrible parents. You're not horrible parents. You just got so focused on what success looked like in your minds that you missed what it actually looked like in reality. Our main courses arrived, but none of us seemed particularly interested in eating. Tell us about the house, Dad said. Tell us exactly what happened. I took a sip of wine before answering. 3 years ago, Morrison Construction defaulted on several major contracts. You'd overextended, taken on projects that were too big, and the cash flow problems were mounting. Dad nodded grimly. The Peterson Plaza disaster. We lost $200,000 on that job alone. The bank was going to foreclose on your house within 30 days. I knew because I have financial monitoring software that tracks family assets. I wanted to make sure you were okay. You were monitoring our finances? I was protecting our family. When I saw the foreclosure notice, I had Sterling Properties purchase the mortgage from the bank. For how much? Mom asked. $340,000, plus $67,000 in back payments and fees. A total of $407,000. Dad's face went pale. We had no idea we were that deep in debt. You weren't just deep in debt, Dad. You were facing bankruptcy. Morrison Construction owed $89,000 in unpaid supplier bills, $34,000 in equipment loans, and $23,000 in back taxes. How do you know those exact numbers? Because I paid all of those debts too. Sterling Financial Services, another one of my companies, purchased all of Morrison Construction's outstanding debts and restructured them into manageable payment plans. The table fell silent. Mom was crying openly now. Alexandra, she whispered, you saved us from bankruptcy and we never knew? I saved you from bankruptcy, kept you in your home, protected Dad's business reputation, and made sure you could retire with dignity. All while you both told anyone who would listen that I was wasting my life playing with computers. Dad buried his face in his hands. We were so wrong. We were so incredibly wrong. Last month, I continued, when Dad texted me that you were selling the house and putting my stuff on the curb, I realized that you still had no idea what I'd done for this family. What exactly have you done? Mom asked. Beyond the house and the debts, what else? I pulled out my phone and opened the Sterling Foundation app. This foundation has donated $847,000 to local charities over the past 3 years. The Children's Hospital wing that opened last year? Sterling Foundation funded the new pediatric surgery equipment. The scholarship program at Jefferson High School? That's us. The new computers at the public library? Also us. You've donated almost $1 million? Dad asked in shock. $847,000 locally. $15.3 million total across all our markets. I showed them the app, scrolling through project after project that Sterling Foundation had funded. But why didn't you tell us? Why keep it secret? Because every time I tried to share anything about my work, you changed the subject. Every family dinner, every phone call, every text exchange was about how disappointed you were in my choices. I pulled up our text message history on my phone and showed them the screen. Look at this conversation from last Christmas. I texted you about winning a major contract and you responded by asking when I was going to get a real job and stop playing with computers. Dad stared at the messages, his face crumbling. Or this one from my birthday 6 months ago. I mentioned that my company was expanding, and you texted back about how Michael had just bought a new truck and suggested I should ask him for career advice. We were trying to be helpful, Mom said weakly. You were being dismissive. There's a difference. Our waiter approached carefully. Is everything all right? Your meals are getting cold. We're fine, thank you, I said. Could you please wrap these up for us? And bring the check. Of course, Miss Sterling. As we waited for the check, Dad finally looked up at me. What happens now? With the house, with everything? That depends on you. The house is yours to live in for as long as you want. The mortgage payments you've been making have been going into a retirement fund that now has $89,000 in it. When you're ready to downsize, you can keep that money. And Morrison Construction is debt-free and has 3 new contracts lined up, all arranged through Sterling Financial Services. Dad, if you want to keep working, you can. If you want to retire, you can do that too. The check arrived. $847 for dinner. I handed the waiter my black American Express card without looking at the total. Alexandra, Mom said as we waited for the car, how can we ever make this up to you? You can start by being proud of what I've accomplished instead of ashamed of it. We are proud, Dad said quickly. We're incredibly proud. We never knew. You never knew because you never asked. And you never asked because you'd already decided that my work wasn't important. The Tesla pulled up and Marcus got out to open our doors. There's one more thing, I said as we settled into the car. Sterling Tech Solutions just won the contract to design the new smart city system for the entire state. It's a $1.2 billion project over 5 years. Dad stared at me in the dim light of the car's interior. Billion? With a B. With a B. The announcement will be in tomorrow's newspaper. Sterling Tech Solutions is now one of the largest technology contractors in the region. Our daughter, Mom whispered to Dad, owns a billion-dollar company. Multiple companies, actually. But yes. As we drove through the city, my city, running on systems I designed, I watched my parents slowly absorb the reality of what their disappointing daughter had actually accomplished. Alexandra, Dad said as we turned onto Maple Street, I texted you that your stuff would be on the curb. You did. But it's your house. It's always been your house. For 3 years, yes. So when I said I was putting you out, you were threatening to evict me from my own property. We pulled up to the house, my house, and sat in silence for a moment. The realtor, Dad said suddenly. When I went to list the house and he said it belonged to Sterling Properties. He was protecting you. Richard Morrison is one of my employees. He's been managing the Sterling Properties portfolio for 2 years. His last name is Morrison? He's my cousin. Mom's sister's son. I hired him after he graduated from business school. Mom turned to stare at me. Richard is working for you? Richard, Uncle Tom's daughter Jessica, and 3 of Dad's nephews. Sterling Companies employs 14 members of our extended family. 14. Dad's voice cracked. I believe in taking care of family, even when family doesn't realize they're being taken care of. As my parents got out of the car, Dad turned back to me. Will you come in? Just for a few minutes. I looked at the house where I'd grown up, where I'd spent countless hours being told that my interests weren't important, my goals weren't realistic, my achievements weren't worth celebrating. Not tonight, Dad. But maybe this weekend. This weekend would be good, Mom said, wiping her eyes. We have a lot to talk about. We do. As Marcus drove me back to my downtown penthouse, I reflected on the day's events. For 3 years, I'd watched my parents struggle with the shame of nearly losing their home, never knowing that their daughter had not only saved it but built an empire while doing so. Tomorrow, the newspaper would announce the state contract. By next week, Sterling Tech Solutions would be featured in the business section as one of the fastest-growing companies in the region. My parents would finally understand that their disappointing daughter had been quietly revolutionizing an entire industry. But tonight, for the first time in years, they'd go to sleep knowing that their daughter wasn't a failure. She was a success beyond their wildest dreams, and she'd been protecting them all along. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Thank you for saving our home. Thank you for saving our dignity. And thank you for still calling us family after everything we put you through. I smiled and typed back. That's what family does, Dad. We take care of each other even when it's not appreciated. A few minutes later, another text. Tomorrow, can we start over? Can we learn about your work and be the parents you deserve? I'd like that very much. As the Tesla pulled into the parking garage of Sterling Tower, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it's proving them wrong while still loving them enough to save them from themselves. And sometimes, the most successful people are the ones who succeed quietly, protecting the people who never believed in them in the first place.